Hey, Black Blockchain Consultants, it's your girl Cherie here, founder of the organization. Our mission is to introduce 1 million Black people to blockchain. And today I have, I'm going to call him Mr. Hip Hop Crypto. He goes by the name of Trekk. That's Trekk, period. And we follow each other on LinkedIn, but he's also got a podcast and he does a lot of stuff on Instagram and other social media. So we wanted to introduce people during 2019 to how other Black people are using blockchain, leveraging it, and of course, different types of blockchain jobs that are available in blockchain careers. So with that, I want to welcome Trekk here. How you doing?
Hello, and once again, sorry for the misunderstanding about how the interview was gonna go.
Oh,
I
that's okay.
appreciate though, I appreciate the opportunity. And let me just, I'm gonna say, I don't want anybody to associate me with the hip hop guy. Like, please don't. And also the dot that you see at the name is only because of the 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 fill-in parameters for when you do certain forms. Like you have to have some symbol in the second column or second tab for like last name, and it
Mhm.
just so happens that most of how the back end of pages are written, you can put a dot in, and you can get away with that because it's not a special character. So
Very
that's why
interesting.
it's Freck.
You just taught me some game tonight. I love
Yeah.
it. And I
Um,
love the hodl as well. So before we started recording, we talked about your cap there and the hodl, which is
yeah.
hold on for dear life. So definitely love that. So why don't you tell everybody about yourself? A little bit about your background um,
Okay.
and how you got involved with blockchain and crypto.
All right. If you ever meet me in person, I probably have a little bit more details of things to go about within this story. The bottom line of it was I came back from a deployment in 2016, didn't feel like doing the job that I was doing at the time. I used to be in defense contracting, working in Maryland, and I was kind of going through a thing where I just didn't feel like really leaving the house, honestly. And there was a guy I used to follow on YouTube. He doesn't do his channel anymore, but if anybody knows about Mike B and what he was putting out at the time for the latter half of 2016 and somewhat into 27, no, sorry, 2017, came back in 2017. So the latter half of 2017 going into 2018. Me and him were conversing through emails and stuff, and I was telling him what I was thinking. I was initially looking at cybersecurity, and so he was like, "Well, why don't you look into being a smart contract dev?" And honestly, this is like the real like Dada moment because I've been in the space for a couple of years. Like as Crypto Blood says, like I'm at this point what 6 years young? No, not even. Sorry, let me not go that far back. I'm probably what 4 or 5 years young. So like
Yeah.
2013, 2014, right?
Okay.
Um, and so I wasn't heavy into the community and all that stuff back then. Like I did one or two meetups within the DMV area, but I wasn't out there. And so, like I said, came back, wanted to do a change of careers, just something that wasn't what I was doing at the time. And he brought that up to me. I started looking into it, and that got me to where it was like, okay, I think I can do this. And at the time, my Blockfolio was looking okay. So I was like, all right, I could walk away with no issue. And I'm not saying I was a whiz trader. I'm not saying I was balling on my fiat side job. It just so happened that because I was, doing my little cost average in thing, which at the time I didn't even know I was performing cost averaging in. I
Mhm.
was just, okay, if I can get $20 worth of Bitcoin today on this paycheck, cool. In 3 weeks, if I can do like $100 on Ethereum, cool. Like
Mhm.
I was definitely not the educated person that I am today about how to operate in the space. And so,
And can I
uh,
say how jealous many of us are? if you bought Bitcoin at 20.
I'm not saying $20. Oh, believe me, when I got it, it was above the 200 marker. But
Oh, okay. All
it
right.
was a matter of I at least understood I didn't need to do a whole Bitcoin. I can
Okay.
buy
Yeah.
in
Buy
smaller
piece.
amounts to equal to a whole,
Hmm.
right?
Okay.
And what gets me is it's amazing how many people still don't understand that part of the of like crypto economics,
Hmm.
tokenomics, and all that, for how those little details, like that's kind of a big thing if you're really trying to um, get stake in the space. But
Hmm.
as far as that whole thing, huh, I mentally made the decision, and then things played out how they did in the life, and I ended up leaving my job in January of 2017, no, 2018, and everything was cool in the beginning, honestly, where it was, okay, I'm going to do 3 months of just self-study to learn Solidity and be this smart contract dev. And
Hmm.
then I started going to more meetup events, more other events that were blockchain and crypto related, then going to the higher level events like conferences and summits and stuff. And that's how I started to mold or figure out better at what I was going to do in the space. And
Hmm.
I'll be honest, I still don't have that like 100% clear picture of like, this is me, here's what I do exactly. On the end of where I originally started, I was looking at being a smart contract dev. Then I started realizing that I needed to pay bills because going into my stack
Hmm.
and that depleting, and then the market doing what it was doing, because I'm not a trader. That's not my cup of tea. I tell people that all the time. Hodling is not a financially sound way to engage in this space if you are not going to still have a fiat-based income.
Hmm. True.
Simple fact of math.
Hmm.
And I learned that the hard way through 2018.
Understand.
Uh, yeah. And so started trying to figure out what could I do to get income in. And then it was like, well, what could I do to get to really make the crossover from the fiat into crypto? And so started trying to think of different things, but it was like, well, what is my skill level? What do I have? What do I know that somebody else would be interested to pay for, bottom line. And huh, it was trying to look at doing the education thing, but the way I looked at the space at the time for 2018 in the second quarter was there was already tons of free information out there.
Hmm.
I don't see the point of reinventing the wheel, and I'm not going to go and then quote jack somebody else's material and then push it off as my own. Like that's just corny to me, honestly. I would tell people all the time, like, if you want to, learn about this, I'll give you 101 websites you can go and look at, and you could learn all of the stuff and more of what I know.
Hmm.
But the issue was what I realized early on was people place a higher value on convenience over understanding. And after X amount of different conversations with people who I know who are more financially sound within the space, it was like, okay, how do you monetize this? You charge a convenience fee.
Hmm.
Because at the end of the day, all of this information is out there. Now the thing where you come into play, that being me, was
Hmm.
you're charging the convenience fee of consolidating and cutting out the fluff and noise for the relevant information to give people. So when I say putting cryptos and blockchain content into context,
Hmm.
that's what that goes down to as far as what my consulting side stuff is. Uh, and it took me a while, like honestly, to really hone that down. Like I'm talking more than half of the year. So like I said, more than 6 months of going from looking to be a smart contract dev, looking at the education stuff, realizing that it wasn't going to be what I thought it was, watching my blockfolio just go down, 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 having to do other things that were fiat based. I'm also in the National Guard, so I had to do stuff like M-Day orders. If you know anything about the soldier life, in regards to reserve side, you know what M-Day orders are. And that basically means you go in and you do work for whatever your unit needs, or like your battalion will push you out to some other project or whatever.
Right.
So that was the reality of what I was dealing with last year. And I had the podcast idea, actually before the podcast idea, still trying to figure out how to get income. I was writing on Medium, and I was writing on Medium and Bitcoin Pub. And there was a lady I met on LinkedIn, because I was also posting stuff on LinkedIn. And because of the collective that I was a part of, we were doing live streaming on DLive, and one of the people happened to work for an exchange. They happened to be in Europe at the same time in a particular country, and I made that connection, and that led to me having the opportunity to start writing for, testing out, writing an article for her, for the company that she's working with in the space right now, and I'm still writing with them. And so that was my first, quote, paid gig. Like, I got into writing literally like ass backwards. That was not the intention at all. Like,
but that's okay. It's so funny because I read an article today that said that the top 3 freelance opportunities in terms of percentage growth in 2018 was writing, blockchain, and artificial intelligence. And writing grew 530 something percent, and blockchain grew like 300%. And I actually noted it to the group. I said, writing about blockchain probably went up exponentially because you see all of these opportunities out here and all of this content that's being pushed out. So that makes perfect sense that you got in, that way.
And it was literally one of the one of the things I say about the gig economy and it meeting blockchain is, the question is, what do you know already? What skill do you have? Or what are you willing to do?
Mm-hmm.
In my case, I've already spent enormous number of hours watching YouTube videos. I'm I don't want to say like cum laude Google University, but I have definitely been all up and down YouTube and Google in searching for information on stuff.
Yeah.
And this is why it really it gets me when you talk to people and they're just like, oh, I have no idea, or like, I don't know where to start. It's all there.
Yeah.
But what gets it, I think, generally speaking, if you put aside like the technology access, right? Access to the technology, as far as like searching technology, so internet search engines and stuff, people generally, like I said, place a higher value on convenience over understanding. So if you can put it into a nice, neat package for me, great. And so like, that's part of my thing about writing. I can get technical. I mean, I can go super deep, like code level technical, but I'm pretty okay as far as like, let me have the up here conversation, and then I'll translate it to you over here as somebody who has no idea about like, time lock synchronicity and stuff like that. Like,
and the average person doesn't know that. And typically the average person with the checkbook doesn't know that either. That CEO or CFO is, asking, how does this benefit me? And that really is the key. And anybody who can translate geek, as I call it, to the decision makers in the C-suite, like that person is the best middle person. I had heard a guy once say that it's like being a toll bridge from one section to the other. And every time they talk to you, it's a toll. They made me. So, but you are right that people do want it packaged. Even I did it that way. When I started learning about blockchain, I bought a course because I, did want it packaged. I had a lot of things going on, but I was CNBC for a while had something about blockchain and crypto every single day, to the point where I couldn't ignore it anymore. And a lot of executives were the same way in 2016, where they couldn't ignore it anymore. Or 2017 is when I think when I started really studying. So yeah, people will pay for convenience, and I think they want to be educated in a convenient manner. You know?
And okay, so here's the thing that gets me about that, right? And this is kind of where it gets into like with how I consult with people, and how I look at things within what's going on within the space. And I'm by no means saying like what I perceive or what I say is like the absolute. Just on the end of things change, or I might have just misunderstood, how something was functioning or how people were connected on a particular project. Um, but what I've definitely noted, and I'm gonna tell you something offline, but you'll understand where I'm going with this in regards to like comments that I make on videos on YouTube. And when I read other people's comments, especially when I see a lot of the newer folks, if you've been in this space for a while, one of the things that, and I attribute it to a military thing, in that if you come across somebody who's been in longer than you, right? So if you're talking to somebody who's been in like 3-4 years, or they've been on X amount of deployments, you get into this like, oh, so, did you do blah, blah, blah? You start throwing out locations, or you start throwing out units, or you start throwing out terms that that person would understand. And so like I go anywhere and be like, yeah, blah, 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 dirty road, such and such, or camp, blah, blah, blah. And it doesn't matter what year between the 15 years of Afghanistan, if you deployed in those 15 years going back from right now, you will have a clear, like, oh yeah, I remember, like, you will instantly know, all right, that person knows what they're talking about. Because certain things that translate when I'm telling you from my firsthand experience, as opposed to when I'm telling you about it when I read about it in an article or watched it on a YouTube video.
Right.
And what I've found, which is what got me to doing the podcast, was that when I started going to different meetups in different cities and different states, and I was doing a lot of the East Coast side, so like DMV, Philly, didn't really get to New York that much, but it was little things that I would note between how, when I was talking to people who got in 2017, 2016, different mind state compared to the people for my time period of 2014, 2013, and then going further back. And then you get into the whole thing of depending on what kind of group it was. So was it a group about education? Was it a group that was more so about policies and like rules and regulations? Was it a group that was really just focused on trading? Was it a group that was just really geared towards miners? Their what do they call it? Their
vernacular?
No, not their vernacular, but their the culture of that group is different based on how the organizers put it together. Case in point, GBA out of the DC, right?
Government Blockchain Association. Yes.
Exactly. When you go to one of their meetups, it's very structured. It's very high professional level. Who works for DOD, who works for State Department, who works for Department of Energy, who works for NASA, who's a lawyer, who's a doctor. Now, I go to Philly, and I'm talking to John, who's a steel worker, and Mary, who works the graveyard shift Saturday through Thursday, and today just happens to be her day off, and so she came to this crypto meeting. Like, the differences within that got me to be like, oh wow. And then when I would have the conversations, it's the little things you throw out that if you're new in the space, how you talk about them is very different than when you were actually in the space at the time of that event.
Right. Makes sense. Definitely.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a little bit about your podcast. So why don't we talk
Mhm.
about that for a second? I know you've got a group, you've got a podcast. Why don't you tell us some of the things that you're doing just overall with your business?
Okay, so huh, the podcast idea, like I said, initially started out as me just having conversations with people that I was knowing in the space for the meetings that I was going to. And initially, I was just focusing o- on meetups and events like that, curated around cryptos and blockchain.
Mhm.
And I started doing interviews back in like February, March of 2017, no, 2018. And then around the summertime, after X amount of different conversations and stuff, and noting other things going on in the space, and kind of really questioning my whole, what is my look on the space as far as, am I really an inclusion person? Because if I'm an inclusionary person, then um, how do I argue about mass adoption? Is mass adoption really just going to be a top down thing? Is mass adoption only going to be people who have the money? Is mass adoption only going to be people who are technically inclined? And so that got me to start expanding out the conversation pool as far as, hey, if you're an accountant at some kind of crypto or blockchain company, I would like to talk to you. If you're an artist, I would like to talk to you. If you're a digital nomad and you mess with cryptos, I would like to talk to you. If you're an adult entertainer person and you take cryptos on your Chatterbait or your Spank Chain site, I would like to talk to you.
Hmm.
The simple premise being is that in order for us to have mass adoption, it takes all types.
Yeah.
And that conversation, that premise has allowed me to have conversations with people not only in the US, but outside of the US
Right.
to get the full global perspective on this thing we call the crypto community, and how people are taking blockchain at the ground level. My focus within Trekk and Cryptos to Connect, talking with everyday people, is to literally talk with people who are at the ground level. I have another segment that is more dedicated towards um, the bigger personalities in the space. So, that's like talking to, for example, Pamela, who wrote the book Crypto Asset Inheritance Planning. Her name, sorry, it's actually Pamela Morgan. She's a bigger personality in the space. If you know anything about the conversation that's going on around crypto asset inheritance planning. First person that I know who wrote the book on it, and she's actually a lawyer, so she has a very strong understanding of the space on both sides of it,
Yeah, it's
right?
a book that you recommended or you're
Yes.
starting to read. Yeah.
Well, I'm starting to read it, and here's what I'll say: if you do anything crypto, literally anything, as far as you're saying you're a consultant, you're a trader, you have some, and you're a hodler, quote, investor, and you've just like put it over there and kind of whatever with it. If you're a miner, if you haven't figured out what you're going to do if something happens to you,
Hmm.
then you kind of wasted your time, because who is that going to go to?
I agree. It's funny because I got my Trezor, and I started moving certain cryptos off the exchanges into my Trezor. And I had to put a big note on the box as I was putting it in the safe saying, Mom, this is money. Do not throw this away if I die. Give this to, and I gave her the specific person's name so that they can get this for you. But for
Mhm.
those of us who have family members and people who are not into crypto at all, they would look at that Trezor and say, I don't know what this is, and throw it out. And we
Sure.
heard these stories of people that threw out millions of dollars of crypto, obviously when the
Mhm.
market was higher, millions of dollars of crypto because they didn't know what it was. So at least just clearly marking it and making sure, that if something happens to you, but I understand Miss Morgan's book is probably a lot deeper than that in terms of inheritance planning, but just people not throwing it away.
Here's what I'll say. I don't know if you know who Jameson Loft is.
Mm-mm.
So Jameson Lopp is like old school cypherpunk, right? And he is in the first part of the book that has to do with like the praise of like, hey, this is a good book because
Mhm.
if you are in the space and you know anything about who Jameson Lopp is, aka poster child for cypherpunk, um, to have him say, I read the book and I thought I really had everything covered, and there was things that I was like, you know what? Like I'm paraphrasing. Let me just say that. Sorry. But to have him say, I learned a thing or two new, like he's Mr. Privacy number one uno in the
Mhm.
crypto space. He advocates it hard all day. Um, and to have him say like, yeah, I actually like picked up on one or two things that I didn't know or I wasn't implementing in that way.
Mhm.
That's a big thing for somebody who is in the who knows who he is and like what that shows about the information she presents in the book. And it's only like 100 and something pages, but it's not lawyer talk, you know, it's not lawyer speak. It's really basic breakdown stuff. And it's funny, like the same thing he said, like I thought I had it, I did it the right way. Like I wrote this amount of these things out. I put stuff on the side. I said to this particular family member, yo, something happens to me, this is in my will over here, but here's the actual hard copy of blah blah blah.
Mhm.
And in reading it, it was like, wow, I'm gonna have to go through and revamp my whole thing. Like, also for those of you who are out there watching or listening, as far as the potential job market thing goes, there aren't any lawyers out there really doing this right now. I don't know any crypto consultant quote that's out there doing this right now. Like,
That's interesting. I didn't even think about that.
and okay, so this is something I've thought about for a while, but my initial thought process was when I was looking at being the smart contract dev and how to do it within that framework of digital um, planning inheritance, right? So using the smart contract to do it. And she also points out issues with the smart contracts and certain laws that relate to certain states. So jurisdiction is a real big thing that I didn't start really understanding until going through the book.
Right.
For even like just because you have the will and the will mentions it, if you didn't actually put the access information for the family member to use it, or you made it so complicated.
Mhm. They won't be able to get to it. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, what
Um,
else are you doing besides? You talked about your podcast. What's the name of the podcast again? I want to make
the
sure everyone.
podcast is Trekkin. So Trekken, not ing. The number two cryptos. Sorry, Trekking Cryptos 2, the number 2, and then Connect. And so you can find it on Anchor. Well, actually, at Anchor, it's anchor.fm/Trekk, Trekk. And you can find the episodes on there. You can find me on Instagram at Trekking Cryptos. And I'm on Twitter pretty much all day. Like my DM box is open on Twitter unless you kind of come off scammy to me, which I've started to note that too. People are coming up with some really kind of sketchy sounding things on Twitter to
You
me.
know,
I don't
it's
know
really interesting. In our climate, if some people spent as much time doing things the right way as they did trying to scam and do it the wrong way, they'd be gazillionaires. Some of them are
why.
very
Hey,
very
yes.
smart people. So, but you also have your group as well. So tell us a
Okay.
little bit about
So I don't know. It's not group. It's basically like a loose collective of us who we kind of we were doing live streaming on blockchain based social media called we were doing BitTube for a while. Then we went to D Live, and then when D Live switched to blockchains, we kind of left them alone. But if you've been in the space for a while, you might know who Ken Bosak is. If you don't know who he is, Google what is it? crypto guy calls out scammer at consensus. He got
Okay.
like, I think over like what 100,000 views on that at this point, because he was calling out some guy that I can't remember his name right now. Another guy who's a part of us is Rice Crypto, and there's another guy named Mac. Oh, stop. And so we were doing that, and we kind of also traveled with another group called the Integrity Show, and that's hosted and put together by Nathan Hawk. And what he literally does is go to different cities in different states, and he puts together events that are centered around blockchain cryptocurrencies. So you'll have somebody who's like a lawyer, somebody who's like a dev person. You'll have other people who have like kind of been in the space for a while, and they'll come and they'll do like, a 5 minute or like a 20-minute speech on something related to cryptocurrencies, the blockchain space.
Okay.
And that's been interesting because I've done a couple of those, and like, how to say this, we're a loose group, but like I said, there's no official like, oh, me and this person is business thing. It's just a matter of we clicked, we got along, and we had ideas on stuff to do for content creation and social media, and it worked out. As
Okay.
well as we kind of all share the same ideology about the space. So that's on that part of it. With the consulting part, that's like, if you're looking to on ramp in the space and you don't know anything, I pretty much give you all the information, and then I'll just help you in regards to guiding you to what relates to what you're trying to do. That is on whether you're an individual or whether you're a business. Let's say you're like a mom and pop business, like a local bar or, a liquor store or something like that, or a bodega, that level. Then you can go up, obviously,
Right.
into like the more enterprise level stuff. Generally speaking, I don't do the financial advice stuff as far as like, I'm not going to tell you what to buy. I don't do the trading talk stuff. I can point you in the direction of people who have a pretty good track record for what they do, but I'm not going to tell you this is what you should do. One of the things that I kind of hold real dear to heart about the original ideologies is cryptocurrencies, blockchain technology is permissionless, right? And so within that concept, I can't tell you you're quote right or wrong on what you use or you do not use. So for example, I can acknowledge that Ripple has a very good product as far as their suite is concerned for banking, interchanging, and finance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we talk about XRP, because of where I sit in regards to what cryptos are like in my mind, right, and use
You're more of
case,
a purist.
that's one word that could be used.
Yeah.
But once again, I can still acknowledge that Ripple itself and the suite that they provide, yeah, makes sense on the tech side and just like on the business of what they're doing. And so that's kind of gotten me into different spaces of conversation. For example, right now, there is a project that I am working on, and we'll get it out this year, but it's launching in Africa. We're looking at Ghana, and it's going to be a wallet, and we're going to have some other extra features to get into the more bigger part of the financing society, or set up, I guess to say, within that country. I know we're not the only ones looking there right now. There are other folks, and that's one thing that I've been working on like since like last summer. And once we get to a certain stage, I'll actually start like name dropping
Right.
what that is.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is I write. I write for a platform called Digitex. I've been writing for them since last year. I want to say October, August, or something like that. You can find me on the same thing. It's under Trekk, and all this stuff for there primarily focuses on the platform itself. It's a crypto futures exchange. If you know anything about futures, just think of BitMEX. So they're looking to do the same thing, but they have their own twist on how they're going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I was more interested in the tech side of it. Like I said, I'm not a trader,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't recommend any trading platforms over others. It just so happens that I was curious about the tech. They liked how I wrote, so that worked out as a relationship.
Right. Well,
Um,
our group, Black Blockchain Consultants, focuses on, how people can break into the industry, whether they already have a job at some
mhm,
Fortune 500 company, and they want to, either find a new position or add to what they're currently doing, or they may want to open up a business, whether they want to be a consultant or have some sort of a platform that does, solves a need.
mhm,
Um, or whether they want to invest in blockchain projects. We have groups of people that will fund different blockchain projects and things like that. So if you had to give, let's say, two or three pieces of advice to that type of person who is, you know, asking, okay, it's going to be a $3.1 trillion industry. I just want to make sure it doesn't pass me by like Internet 1.0 and 2.0. What would you suggest to that person? And that'll be our final question for tonight.
okay, what would I suggest?
Mm-hmm.
And the quicker you figure out how to get paid in crypto, is the quicker you can leave the fiat side.
Okay.
That's one thing. And that's based on either what you know already, what skill you have, or what you're going to be willing to do. And just finding someone who will be willing to pay you for one of the or three or all three of those things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the other part, be leery of projects and people that place profit over added value. That's what this last year in particular has taught me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I have learned that I am definitely a tech over price person, and I am a added value over profit person.
Mm-hmm.
Like
I think it's a
it
good
might
principle.
it might sound real general and idealistic. I'm not gonna lie.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and what I will also say is um, making the crypto to fiat crossover is not for everyone. It's like even for now where it is, right? Um, it's just not because we're living in a first tier country, and so the infrastructure isn't necessarily geared towards that,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to do a lot of back end work to figure out how to still function in the fiat based setup that we're in.
Right.
And not everyone is about that life, honestly.
Yeah. And they may never be, it'll
So,
be, it, it will take a lot for fiat, in my opinion, for crypto to really overtake fiat because you are dealing with governments around the world. And at the end of the day, there are rule of laws for certain things. So
mhm.
it'll just be interesting to see over the next, I would say, 10 years, how things shake out. But final question that I have for you, and I really am going to let you go. You mentioned that there are some blockchain-based products and services that you use on a daily basis, and I'm very curious what they are.
Okay. Like so for the company that I do the writing with, they pay me in crypto, so I have a wallet. I
Mm-hmm.
actually use Edge Wallet. That's like my go-to wallet on everything. I have X amount of other wallets, but those are just more like, hold it over there thing. And the reason why I end up using that one on a regular is because I can do in-app conversion.
Okay.
So um, my employer pays me the crypto. I need to move it over to my BitPay card. And those are literally things that I use every week.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually trying to find another option for a crypto debit card, but that's Ethereum based. Um, but yeah, BitPay and Edge Wallet are the two things that I use like on a daily. And
Right.
um, it's one of those things though that, like I said, you got to do X amount of work on the back end. But once you find the things that work for your particular situation,
Mm-hmm.
you kind of just run with it and grow with it.
Yeah,
So yeah.
definitely. Well, thank you so much for joining us and for giving us your expertise and just a glimpse into your life. And we hope that you will one day, come and hang out with us a little bit more at Black Blockchain Consultants. Let us know how things are going. And we will be checking out your podcast too.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk with you. Sorry if I ramble too much, people.
No,
Like,
you're
I'm passionate about this space and like just
Mhm.
the things that go on in it. And yeah, I mean, hopefully something I say clicks with somebody. They get inspired. They have more questions. The information's out there. That's what I'm gonna say all day, every day. The information's there.
Yeah. And the great thing is that, we got it in the palm of our hand. We got the computer right here. So,
There you go.
yes, get on the computer and do some research or, reach out to one of us. So that's it for me. Good evening. We're at blackblockchainconsultants.com. If you want to be a part of the inner circle, get all sorts of information with regards to growing your business or just general blockchain knowledge, we'd love to assist you. So again, blackblockchainconsultants.com. Okay.